And I brought extra tissues.
Oh man.
There we go.
Hey, we're not even going to do a countdown today. What do you know? Welcome to the Teachers Pep Rally. We're very excited to be here with Thomas Hummel and Thomas Thompson from Eduaide.ai. Welcome to the Teachers Pep Rally.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having us. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. So, Thomas Hummel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm a 7th and 8th grade science teacher on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And this is my 7th year teaching, which is kind of hard to believe. Just had my first child 12 weeks ago. Thank you. Oh, it is the best thing ever. And I am, I guess, one of the founders of Eduaide, and that's pretty much it. It's been a long, crazy ride here the last year or so, getting involved with AI and education. But I'm a teacher at heart. I'm still a teacher. I'm in the classroom. I coach soccer too. I have a competitive team on the Eastern Shore, Maryland, of girls. I help them get recruited to colleges.
Nice.
Where that team's Shore FC, so it's pretty cool to be part of that as well. So teacher, coach, and now business entrepreneur, AI guy, I guess, is my now official title.
And dad.
That is amazing. And the fact that you're in good company, because we're all teachers at heart, and education is exactly what we want to be talking about tonight. But I played soccer, high school, college, and even afterwards. So that warms my heart.
It's a great sport.
It's an amazing sport, and I love it every year. I love it more and more. All right. The other Thomas, tell us about you.
Yes, my name's Thomas Thompson. I'm a middle school social studies teacher. I teach 8th grade U.S. history. I teach in Annapolis, Maryland. Hummel and I used to teach together on the Eastern Shore. That was 2 years ago now, which doesn't feel that long ago. I've been teaching now for 5 years. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Eduaide.ai. And unlike Hummel, I don't have any interesting coaching jobs or children or anything like that. I'm pretty boring. It's pretty much just Eduaide and teaching for me right now.
Well, you're rocking the plants behind you, so we'll give you credit.
Okay, yes, I'm a plant father. I have many that I keep.
You have a green thumb.
Look after my mother-in-law. She put me on to having some plants.
That's great. Well, I'm curious so I'm hearing the teaching part of it, and I'm very excited to hear more about that and your style and what your classroom's like and your pedagogy. But I'm curious as we get into this, because we're going to be talking about Eduaide.ai. First of all, can one of you tell us what it is? And then secondly, maybe the other person can say how you all got involved in it.
Yeah, I'll start us off with what it is, and then Hummel can talk about how it all came together, because he brought this great team that we have together. So Eduaide.ai is an application for teachers to engage in instructional design, lesson planning, through the use of generative AI, right? But we're very much instructional design first. The idea is we use generative AI to integrate the variety of tools you may use in the course of planning a lesson, from the lesson planning part to the content creation to the provision of feedback and assessments and all of that. So really end-to-end assistant for the classroom.
And how we all came together was basically when COVID hit, Thomas and I, we had a little bit of time extra at our school that we were working at. And we just found ourselves kind of mulling over the, issues in education, and we were living them at this Title I school. And basically what we saw was there was going to be a mass exodus of staff. And we just thought, how frustrating is that we pour all this into this school and into our school culture, and it just goes away because either the county couldn't keep them together or just people's lives change and stuff. But we were losing good teachers, and it was really frustrating. And so some time went on, and basically ChatGPT came out, and I have another friend, Tyler, who can code and can do all kinds of web-based stuff. And so I just didn't know. I thought that ChatGPT would be a hard barrier for teachers to kind of grasp. And just the interfacing with a chat bot is just really not natural. And being a teacher, we have no time to learn. I mean, it sounds horrible, but I've really not had a great professional development ever in one of my schools where I learned something new. And I just thought that was going to continue. and how could I help teachers get the power of AI in their hands. And so I collaborated with Thompson, and we put it all together. And next thing you know, we got 1 million teachers signed up on this thing, and it's just been absolutely insane.
So not only are you able to tell the future, but you have created something. I think it sounds like, because you are a teacher yourself, that was an obvious need or want from the greater, colleagues out there.
it's
Sounds
just taking homework is really like one of the detriments to teaching. Like, it's so easy to get burnt out. We have so much asked upon us. And, if we can save teachers time in any facet while they're creating higher quality lessons, it was like a no-brainer to try to get my friends together and accomplish this mission, because I feel like it directly tackles the needs of education today.
So I'm kind of curious, and like, just in general, you said your background is in science, and so you're obviously aware of tools and resources on the internet, which every teacher is usually. But the what was your moment when you first encountered the chatbots like ChatGPT or some of the other ones that were in the background?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know, right when they launched, I'm just kind of a nerd, right? So, being a science guy, I was really sort of tapped in whatever my networks are that I already follow and kind of use to learn what's going on in the world. They were pretty gung ho on AI, and I
Yeah.
just started playing around with it. I mean, it was literally just late nights and realizing, wait, I can save so much time and I can do so much more for my students. And it was just, I mean, it just double light bulb there.
So was it OpenAI that you first started to dabble with, or was it
Yeah,
with
it was
another large
OpenAI
language
that
model?
we first started to run with, and then once we kind of put the team together, we just started to really dive deep into all these variety of models, and we can get into kind of how we use that, but it was definitely ChatGPT's OpenAI that was the first one. I
Okay,
mean,
cool.
just unbelievable. You ask it to do something, and it does what Google does, but in half the time, and it's creative, and it was just, I was blown away by it, really.
That's neat.
So I'm
That's really
sitting
cool.
here hearing that part of it was to be a time saver, right? To help with time management. Yeah.
Mhm.
What else? And I'll ask Thomas Thompson, what else would you say the platform was initially created for?
Yeah, really two things. One is that it dramatically lowers the cost of exploration. As a teacher, we don't often have the opportunity to explore techniques and methods that we may not traditionally use in the classroom. So that's how you end up with classrooms that still look like the classes of the industrial age, with rows and teachers lecturing. And while that happens less, even maybe the questions the teachers are asking aren't getting students to the levels of like meaning making and having them elaborate upon their thinking, and diving deeper and getting to that next level of not just retention but moving beyond that to understanding, and then from there to analysis, evaluation, etc. So there's that. And then there's also the, if you can constrain generative AI within evidence-based instructional parameters, you can have it to begin to generate materials that will, say, for example, in your lesson plan, always include prior knowledge measures, right? Because learning is mediated by prior knowledge and students learn in relation to what they already know. And then from there, you can create assessments or materials to gauge the level of scaffolding necessary to move students from their prior knowledge to the to be learned material. And then when we started thinking about the ways that we can use generative AI to connect teachers with evidence-based practices and new instructional methods, we started to see the power beyond just saving time. So my background was in open educational resources, and a lot of the talk there is in cost savings. And it's like, okay, of course, yeah, it's free, it's going to save you money, right? And generative AI, of course, it's going to save you time. It can, as Thomas was saying, generate something in 30 seconds. But what can you do? What's the next step? How do you get that extra level of power out of it? What's the affordance that we're not seeing? And that's really kind of some of the deliberate design choices we're making on our site.
That's great. And I feel like some of my questions, I might need to see a little bit of what it looks like. Do you think that you could show us
Yeah.
how it works?
Let me hop over here.
And as you're
Okay.
doing that, can teachers, especially K through 12, plug in even like what kind of standards they're looking to measure?
Yes, they can. So let me do one other thing. I'm going to pull up I teach in Maryland, so I'm going to pull up the Maryland State Social Studies framework, and I'll just use some of those standards as examples with a few other interesting things that we can do here. Is my screen showing? Because when I'm on the Eduaide screen, I can't see the StreamYard, so I want to make sure. Okay,
Yeah, the only one we're seeing right now is the Eduaide site, and that if you could reshare, you could put up the next one too, and I could put that out there.
Okay, here we are.
There you go.
I'm over on the Maryland framework now, so I'm going to go down to, I teach middle school social studies. We have our large standardized test coming up, so I'm actually putting together reviews, so I might get some work done on this call.
Oh, great. Another time saver opportunity.
So, all right, let me hop over to Eduaide and sign in. So when a teacher goes to our site, this is what they're met with, although this is actually going to be changing next week. We're getting a bit of a revamp. So let's hit continue with Google here. We'll go with our single sign-on. And there we are. We're into our site now. So when you launch the Eduaide application, this is what you'll be met with. This is our content generator. We organize our tools across the generator, the assistant, the feedback bot, the chat, and the assessment builder. There are over 150 different resource types on the site, so we don't have enough time to dive into everything, but I would like to maybe respond to some questions you have or take some requests on things you would like to see, and we'll go a little bit from there, keep it pretty casual. But we'll start with the lesson seed. It's our most popular tool because it's a great brainstorming partner. It's going to give teachers kind of a broad document to give them some ideas of where they could go, possible strategies, possible methods, possible activities. To just pick something at random, let me look at my bookshelf here. There's the Federalist Papers. We'll go with that. So the writing of the Federalist Papers. And maybe that's all you have, just a couple of keywords, what you want to talk about. What we found is that, of course, the output of an AI is oftentimes, the quality of the output of an AI is oftentimes determined by the quality of the inputs. That's where the prompting comes in, right? And if all you have are some keywords, you might not get something that's going to be fit for practice in the classroom. I mean, you will on our site because it's getting injected into a broader prompt structure, but we have this enhance button, which kind of takes your prompt and optimizes it even more into a learning objective. So now we have this extra layer of constraint already. So everything's framed within educational language and lingo. Students will analyze the purpose, structure, and arguments presented in the Federalist Papers to better understand the formation of the United States government. A lot better than just the writing of the Federalist Papers. Hit add to workspace. And this is what our lesson seed is basically going to look like most every time. This general structure, maybe a little bit more in the text, sometimes maybe a little bit less, but this general structure will always be here. You're going to have your objectives, different objectives you could hit. Requisite prior knowledge. Always have prior knowledge measures, and then you can jump into, say, prior knowledge and scaffolding to see how students could get to that level, etc. Cue sets to activate said prior knowledge and 3 different strategies. What we have here is kind of a granular workspace. Everything is very independent. It all exists. You can kind of resize depending on your workflow. And so you could jump right in with edit. And you're like, you know what? I am just going to use this last cue set here. I don't need these other ones. I'll take that out, right? And now you're kind of playing with your lesson here. Something you can't really do in the chatbot, right? You're very much locked into talking to an AI. Here you have this kind of collaborative workflow. There's AI around you, but you're able to do your own work as well. And you don't necessarily have to use AI tools all of the time. You can do your planning here as well. Then we move into direct instruction strategies, 3 possible different ones around maybe group discussions, specific excerpts, historical background. And you're going to see things like lecture sometimes, or you're going to see things like discussions, because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel in all cases, but we're trying to provide you with an ideal strategy in this situation. You could jump over to, say, our direct instruction script, have it tied to this exact same standard or objective. And what it's going to provide is a quick rundown of some of the things, some check-in questions, discussion questions, and it's going to hit the 3 key parts. And you can
that's really cool.
Chat, and you can ask it to expand upon this previous thing. You can do even more, get on a very kind of fine-tuning level. To dive back in over here, though, then it'll take us into possible practice assignments, which you can find in independent practice and in the cooperative learning, team-based activities, formative assessment measures, and deep questions to engage students in meaning making. And then we have these pairs here. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that's impressive too. That's neat.
the pairs are going to basically build a scope and sequence of instruction that is logical. So you could say go to taxonomy scaffolding to build off of your lesson plan, and now you have different questions to ground your lesson at every level of Bloom's taxonomy and
Oh,
different
that's so
types of questions
cool.
to approach. So this is a very good tool to share my screen again, for unpacking a standard. Right. These are the standards I have to work with in Maryland. I would say not the best. What I have is a content topic, a question, some possible indicators or objectives, and possible assessment limits. It's like, well, how do I make something meaningful for my students out of that? How do I create a lesson out of that? Right. You can use this tool to really kind of unpack this standard. You could say, take the entire thing if you wanted to, or just the one objective and use that. But perhaps you're not sure what prior knowledge is necessary for students to access this. Let me close some of my tabs here. So let's throw that whole standard in there. Let's go to prior knowledge and scaffolding. And what we have now are the 4 big things students should be aware of before getting into this topic, and then different ways that you can bring them to that. Different KWL charts, timelines, role-playing exercises, and okay, you can do a role-playing exercise. We can go over to our questions here. We can go to scenario-based questions. And now we have you're a political analyst in the Federalist Democratic Republican Party era. You were asked to assess the impact of these parties on domestic and foreign policy. How would you explain the different approaches of these parties towards the issues such as the whiskey tax, national bank, alien and sedition acts? And that's what we found in the standard down here on the assessment limits. So it's questions tied directly to the state standards assessment limits on the final test. So I could take that, throw that into a review that I might be doing with my class, and I now have a scenario-based question to play with. And maybe I like that tool. So now you can favorite it and you don't have to go digging through these menu options. But our menu is kind of deliberately laid out. We go from planning, which is really the kind of first instructional act, then into the presentation of information through the information objects, then student independent or deliberate practice with the to-be-learned material. And only then can you move into the cooperative learning structures when you're sure the students have the prior knowledge necessary to be able to interact with that, to be able to interact with each other. Too often I see teachers kind of will throw a kid into a collaborative learning structure and the kids don't have the necessary prior knowledge, and then they're forming misconceptions in these peer discussions. And those are hard to it's much easier to learn something right the first time than learn it wrong and then get past the mistake and then relearn it right. That's a tougher process. And then you can move into, say, gamification, and maybe you're building out a review game. You can go Jeopardy style here. And now I have a Jeopardy review game. I could pop right into my PowerPoint that's going to review everything on this standard.
All right. So I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
First of all, you pulled all that up in, I don't know how long that was. It was not very long at all.
45 seconds.
The time saver, Thomas Hummel, is definitely working. Second of all, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I've got kind of 2 areas I want to go into. One is, I know Fred and I and Pete, I'm sure we could play around in here and kind of figure it out fairly quickly because we're familiar. We use a bunch of different things. There might be the teacher that isn't quite comfortable in this yet or able to follow along. So my first question is, what supports or what things would you recommend for that teacher? My other part of it is I'm thinking of our PLCs, our professional learning communities. So Fred's in higher education, so I know he's going to have some questions in that area too. But in the K through 12 space, Fred, like PLCs, a lot of schools have. So if I'm teaching 10th grade English language arts, I'm meeting weekly in most cases with everyone that's teaching 10th grade English language arts, no matter at what level. And we're creating these lesson plans together because ideally, no matter what level the students are at in 10th grade lit, they all should be doing very similar things, maybe with some different differentiation. So how would a PLC work together on this so that it's not just one person creating it all? So how do you support the teacher who maybe doesn't feel real comfortable in this? Because I know you guys have got to have that. Second, how do you encourage PLCs to work together on this so it's not just one person navigating through this?
Yeah, so right now our resources for, say, onboarding a new teacher are admittedly kind of disparate. We have our it's called there's the learning tab. It's on our homepage. It has connections to a bunch of different video demos, run throughs, and then on our YouTube channel we have small 1-minute videos showing you how to log in, how to set up your account, how to change your languages, etc. What we are launching is if you look at the bottom of the nav bar on the left hand side, there are these options for FAQ, support, settings, sign out. What you're going to see in a few weeks here, because we're pretty much done with it, is you're going to see a little a button for our academy, which is going to be modules built into the platform that are going to onboard you on how to go about best use cases for Eduaide, different little activities to build some familiarity, video overviews, some texts, and then also some modules on generative AI more broadly. And that will consistently be expanding as we get new user questions and things like that. But yes, there are some things already in place, and there's going to be a better system in place very soon.
Okay,
As
cool.
for your second question, this is something that we're actively working on, and we're pretty excited about, kind of the local sharing of resources. So let's say we have like a school district sign on, everyone with the whatever it might be email domain would be able to share resources with one another, something that we're currently thinking about and figuring out how that implementation would look. And then around well, this is a lot of what my thesis in graduate school was on, were communities of practice distributed globally, like sharing resources and then using that as a kind of professional development, because now you're revising the resources of other teachers to fit your purpose, etc. And you have like these different starting points. Problem with open educational resources is you need a huge buy-in at the beginning because you need a lot of resources, but generative AI kind of solves that problem. So a community where you'll be able to more broadly share resources as well is something that we're also looking at. So the community features are inbound, but the academy is immediate, so that'll be up soon.
So,
Great.
that goes where my question was. I have a bunch of questions. We could talk all day. So I have technical questions that I could easily jump down in the weeds and love to pick your brain on. But I think I'd like to just discuss what you were just saying about the community of practice. Do you have features built in, or do you plan on having features built in that it's going to be allowed to save what's been generated as opposed to copying and pasting it and moving it outside of the platform?
So everything already does save on the platform. So every
That's cool.
generation you make will automatically save and go into your history, which is going to be taggable. So you're able to do searches and things like that and collect everything. But yeah, everything you make is saved with the exception of feedback. The reason why is our feedback bot. We figured there's maybe a higher likelihood that a teacher may accidentally enter student personally identifiable information in like the work sample area. So one of our ways of like mitigating the leak of any kind of student data or anything like that is that none of that's safe. So once you leave the feedback bot, it disappears forever. So you better take your feedback with you and put it into your Google Docs or whatever, because once you leave that place on the site, it's gone. But everything else saves.
That's cool. Because that's one of the things I think we're seeing now is like certain platforms are showing up built on the, making calls to the large language models, and they're providing these extra, we'll just call them features that you don't get directly in ChatGPT or in, Gemini or any of the large language models that are directly available. And the other real quick question, since I am at higher ed, one of the things that, not that we're ever looking to do, let anything do our jobs for us, but the multiple choice question piece is intriguing to me. But do you have a feature in there that can export out to like a QTI package or something that you could take into your LMS?
So we don't have any formal integrations built in. All of the cards where our material generates are in markdown format. You hit copy at the top of the card, it locks everything, and then you can kind of put it wherever you please from there. There are some, of course, we're adding like prints and PDF and things like that for exports, but no formal LMS integrations as of now.
That's cool though. Yeah. P, what do you think? How would you?
So yeah, I'm going to jump in. So I'm in elementary. I work elementary and middle, and I'm a music teacher, music and art. Could we see any kind of application if I was, I want to get our third graders singing rounds or canons? How would we go about pulling together some sort of lesson on that?
Yeah, I think I stopped sharing for a moment and I started sharing again. Can you all see it? There we are. Let me go down to, oh, no worries.
Because that's our thing. I mean,
yes.
we have the knowledge. For us, it's always we have to get vetted material, the songs, the media. So I'm curious how that could help somebody teaching in the arts?
Yeah, so we have a few resources facing our art teachers. It's all thrown under these enrichment area subject. We've been thinking maybe that's too broad of a category, and we're going to start differentiating kind of the specific subjects from there. But admittedly, I mean, our offerings are kind of light for the music folks and art folks as well, although we have a few things like the song deconstructor, notes and lyrics to any song, right? Or let me jump over to say like our art project here. Let me heart some of these so we can come back to them once I pull them up.
Bad lib.
Cooperative learning.
Yeah.
Yes. Save that. And of course, the materials are differentiated by subject. So once you jump around, you'll find that there's different things for construction paper project. Okay, that's nice.
Battleship style.
Yes, that's a fun review game. Hummel, you put together this enrichment section. Am I missing any more of the art-based or music-based?
I would just say that, you know, as far as providing things for art teachers and whatnot, is that we kind of feel, or at least this is how I feel, is that as when it comes to art and it comes to expression, you know, the teacher is kind of responsible for getting that out of the student. But how you do that and the questions that you do that and the material that you put in front of them to do that is sort of where and what we can aid with. Or at least that's sort of how I viewed us supporting enrichment teachers. Because it's hard. It's like hard. Like we can give you with the art project stuff, you could put in any kind of topic. It can kind of give you directions and stuff. But there's not, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts too after this is like how, you know, I'm not sure that there's a way that the AI is actually even creative enough to like bridge that gap. And so,
well, I'm going to give it a doozy of an artist and an album. So we're going to see if it works. Mingus. Okay. So of course there's no lyrics on Mingus. So what do we have? How to play some songs from the album. What do you need to do? You need to study the song structure. You need to learn the melody. You need to practice the chord progression. You need to work on the rhythm, and then you need to add your interpretation and then start slow. Okay, of course, now they can't give us exact notes due to copyright restrictions on Charles Mingus's discography. Let's go older. We can go down to Duke Ellington. Live at the Newport Jazz Festival.
Nice.
1955, I think, or is it 53? Or is it 56? Wow, I need to brush up. There it is. 56. Yes. All right. And if I could type, that would be even better.
So definitely music history, music appreciation, best practices of picking up an instrument and getting going, or the structure, putting a song together. But as far as the meat and potatoes of the songs and all, that's still going to be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's more for the context around it and the learning around it than it is the meat and potatoes of the actual art that's happening.
Still amazing. Still amazing.
Do you have a particular standard, Pete, or something of a skill or anything that we could plug in just to play with?
I mentioned like third grade singing rounds, you know, like row your boat, and that's our basis of starting to develop a sense of singing and harmony. So
yeah, like what are you looking for? Like to teach them how to do it, like this, or like examples of it, because we do have like the rhyme thing, Thompson, the tongue twister stuff, and the speech. I mean, that's curious. This is an interesting scenario.
Suggestions on learning and how to play for row your boat. Well, not row. Sorry. The proper pitch and rhythm to sing rounds. There we go. Let's go to vocabulary rhymes and see if this. So your own. Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah. This is admittedly an area I don't even play around with too much on the site. I guess when I'm checking, it's usually around the social sciences or some of our science-based resources.
And I noticed earlier you guys had 4 corners. That is the biggest thing in elementary schools now. It's just who would have thought?
It's back.
And you throw in a little bit, the floor is on lava, the floor is on fire with 4 corners, and you got a winning 45 minutes.
So I think I was out on your site maybe 9 or 10 months ago, maybe. And it was, I don't remember seeing as much. Maybe I'm overlooking something, but have you been adding stuff recently?
Yeah, we are pretty consistent in our updates to the site. I know Hummel's on there adding new prompts, and we're consistently testing what we do have, so adding more. It grows, I would say probably what we average about 1 to 2 resources a week in addition, typically. Some weeks we might not have any, but some weeks it might be 4 or 5. So we're averaging, I would say about 1 to 2 new resources a week to the site.
Oh, that's a good pace.
Yeah.
And then, so what have you noticed with whatever you're building on? Are you noticing any performance issues? Are you taking a look at the different large language models, or are you committed to one right now?
Not committed to one. We take a model garden approach for precisely the reason that you're getting at. There were times where like OpenAI would have an outage, and then I'd go over to Anthropic's site and Claude's up or something like that. Or Claude will release a new model, and we're curious about what that can do. So we have access to a variety of large language models that we build out redundancies. So, for example, if GPT goes out, our system immediately kicks on to Claude, so you never have any downtime at all. There's never any service outages, so we're able to keep consistent uptime. I'll say 99.99% of the time. Additionally,
there was a real interesting conversation on one of the podcasts that I listened to. It's a service that somebody's building that takes a look at what the prompt is asking, or what the prompt is prompting. And if it's math oriented, or if it's literature oriented, or if it's science oriented, certain large language models are stronger in certain areas, and it optimizes based upon the prompt, and it'll direct you into those niches, I guess. Is that something that you see possibly, being useful for what you're doing here?
I mean, it's not so much that we have like a system in place that's going to redirect a teacher from model to model. We've done it such that we kind of make that choice ahead of time, depending on the tool that we're designing. So, we might be testing the quest-based prompt, and then we try that out on GPT, and then we'll go over into the Anthropic workspace, play with it there, maybe see what we can do using Llama or something like that, and then making a decision from there which one we want to go with through our testing. I think having maybe some options where you can kind of pick which model you want to work with would be quite interesting. It's not something that we're actively pursuing right now. Although I think as these models develop and we get into things like GPT-5, and the cost of GPT-4 falls and the cost of GPT 3.5 falls even more, it's like, okay, well, maybe you don't need to use 5 or 4 on every single tool. Maybe 3.5 is perfectly serviceable on a certain topic. Maybe 4 is even better on another, and that's also going to allow us to say, if you don't need to use 4 to get the best result for the specific thing, that might be like a multiple choice question, which 3 can do. 3.5 turbo with this expanded 16K context can do pretty well. Maybe you do that, because that's how you can offer a tool then at $5.99 and make it affordable for school districts while not sacrificing quality. It's just making those kind of pragmatic decisions as you're testing. If I'm noticing that there's not much of a performance differential between 4 and the 3.5 turbo, maybe we go with 3.5 turbo, maybe we go with 4. It's just wherever is most cost effective and most reliable for the tool, and best kind of follows our ethos, which must be, connect teachers with evidence-based practices. That's the must. That's the foundation.
Right.
Yeah, Thomas Hummel, I'm curious, you both obviously use this in your classroom. Do you also hear stories from other educators that are using it? And if so, can you share with us some of the cool things that they've been able to use it for and shared with you?
Yeah, so I guess a couple cool situations that have blown me away, that I didn't, sort of like hidden value that I didn't really know that we would be creating, is a principal contacted us and told us how it was making her like an even better principal, because now when she goes to teachers to talk about lessons, she's not just like putting all the weight on the teacher. Oh, you should do better questions this way towards this standard, or do this. She actually can go to the teachers now with this stuff and the content already created, just to give them some different ideas. And I was just blown away by that. I was like, man, I would love a principal to not like feel like they're coming at me, but like there to actually support me and have the ability to support me, even though they're not experts in science or history or this or that. And so I was just blown away by that story. And another one that is really cool is that um, a lot of teachers don't have somebody to plan with. They don't have somebody to collaborate with. They don't get any new, fresh ideas. They're sort of isolated in their own. They're the only one that teaches in that subject in that school, or one of two in a school district, and it's not built really, or your schedule isn't built for collaborating. And what we found is that people just say that this is just gives them genuinely good ideas, and they take what they like and leave the rest. And it has become like a planning buddy for people as well. So, we don't think like if there's not really a cost in creating stuff for them, they can create all the stuff in the world and just take the best things that they need to fill the gaps that they're missing in their lessons. And I thought that was really powerful as well.
Yeah, and I think you're planting little seeds of sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you don't get a fresh idea in your own mind, but if someone else kind of starts brainstorming with you, and which is what I'm kind of seeing as Thomas is playing in here, then all of a sudden you're getting inspired in so many different ways that you can modify it, use it as is, work with a colleague, and you guys can then even elevate it to the next level, or your students love it, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, but what if we also did this, right? So it just kind of is, for me, I see this as it's just something that you're starting, and you call it a lesson seed. And I guess that's what I'm saying, right? Like you're planting a seed and then it's branching out in whatever way of creativity or innovation that people want it to be.
I think something that sort of stands us apart from other things is that we really do believe that teachers are the experts.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of have built this thing for that, is that it makes generations that are small enough that the teachers have to use their best professional decision to either go with it, don't go with it, or try something new or get this. And we really are against the one size fit all. We don't want to hit the generate button, get a giant bulk thing, and then have them give that to students. I think that's like worst case scenario for AI, because it's not perfect. It hallucinates sometimes. It'll make mistakes. And so we really have tried to get this thing down and refined to the point where teachers can use their best judgment, because, they're professionals and they get to make those decisions. And they're the people that you want making decisions for the stuff in front of students, not the AI or the people that made the AI.
Oftentimes it feels like a tech intervention is meant to kind of solve a teacher's problem, so to speak, and it kind of removes their ability to do certain things. And what we believe is that like a journey to expertise in this field begins with one's decision that they want to, attain expertise, and that it's through their own effort. There's no tool that's going to close that gap for them. Rather, we want to provide tools that will empower the teacher to engage in, well, that pursuit of mastery in their field.
Yeah.
So let me ask the questions, kind of the elephant in the room. What about grading? Do you see this incorporating a way that teachers can upload responses?
Yeah. I mean, I think that grading is not what the AI should do. I think that is teachers are the ones that should grade things, but we do find it powerful for feedback and quickly giving feedback, like as after a rough draft, and allowing students to leverage, some feedback to go and make their content higher quality. But like if you look at Texas, they just, they're using AI to grade their standardized tests this year and stuff. So, it doesn't really, what we do really has no say in like how we feel. Like, it's coming either way. Whether it's good or not, that's sort of above my pay grade. But like, states are moving that way to allowing AI to grade things. And so, maybe there's an argument there that it's not different than Scantron, but it just feels different when it's writing and it's not, selection of things.
I think the one use I've seen for it and higher ed is slightly different in the sense that, we know that we have a responsibility to provide feedback. We're not required to provide feedback. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And that's a dark tunnel to go down as a conversation. But the one thing that I've seen it, I've been able to use it where I've uploaded a rubric and I've uploaded documents based upon solutions based upon, that rubric. and it's given me feedback, but it also ran into not so much the hallucination, but the fatigue. It started to overlook things.
Yeah.
And I always laughed at that, because, and that was across all the models, Claude, Gemini, and now and ChatGPT. But it was interesting. But what it did do, though, was it allowed me to move through the tedium of that aspect, because I do agree with what you said, that, we have to have the teacher involved in the grading, but I also don't, I'm not doing my job so I could sit for 4 days grading essays. My time could be much better used in doing something creative and interactive. Now, getting insight to my students through those assignments is important. And that's what I was getting out of the chat grading. It was giving me feedback. And then I would go back into the ones and I would find the flaws, but it also overlooked a ton of flaws too. So I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
It's kind of
I think you are definitely on the right track there about the, you can give feedback, but you're not necessarily required to give feedback. And there's I think a good reason for that, because if the feedback is not timely and it's not actionable, there's really no point in giving it, right?
Correct.
What's the point of me spending all weekend to write feedback comments on an essay the students wrote on Thursday to give that to them on Monday? They've really forgot what they wrote already. They're not going to be thinking about, a good way to go about improving it. And it's really untenable to think you're going to give actionable feedback to 120 students on a 5-paragraph essay. You're one person, and that's quite a bit of reading to do with it, quite a bit of, a lot of writing on your part, a lot of thinking, right? You want to dive into the students' writing.
Right.
Having this as a tool to kind of give that work its first look, right? So you input your assignment for feedback, a student writing sample. You have different feedback reports, and it's going to give the students, an overall feedback, some strengths, some areas for improvement, actionable steps for improvement. And you're right, it might not hit every single thing on the essay, but it's going to suggest strategies that they can use. It's going to suggest, we framed it so it's not going to go, it's going to give you kind of a broad sense of, hey, you need to work on your transition phrases in general. Like, I don't have a specific paragraph to point to, but like you could go to your, say, 3rd paragraph. That's where the teacher kind of steps in and then starts checking what the AI is doing. But and when I say checking, I don't mean like proofreading. I mean checking like in the checks and balances sense of checking, right? Like, we don't want the AI to do everything. We want the teacher to step in and have a role and put their personal voice in as well.
Yeah. And I wear the hat of standard-based grading. So for me, I see this as, like you said, a quick first initial of maybe a rough draft. I mean, hopefully we're not grading a whole paper when we haven't seen it yet, but maybe we're looking at certain sections of it. So that's what this is great. Like, if we're just working on transition sentences today, let's look at it as a whole and just focus on your transition sentences today. And this gave really quick feedback, as you were mentioning. For the custom feedback, I'm curious then, let's say, because here's the other thing. When you're grading, we tend to, as teachers, want to give feedback on everything, but ideally we should just be focusing on giving the feedback on the actual standards that we're only grading it for, right?
Yes.
And that's sometimes hard for us. If it's grammar, unless it's really disruptive of what they're trying to say, try to leave it alone if that's not what you're grading at the time, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious with the custom feedback section, can you specifically ask it to look for, organization or of the paper, or can you have
so you could give, say, specific things that you're looking for, or the way we've kind of framed this tool is a teacher could say, bring in the rubric that they've been using or are supposed to use, and then you can throw that rubric in, and then it will provide feedback based on it. So I just copy and pasted a random rubric I pulled up here. Let me go and share this tab instead. Just did a quick search for an argumentative essay rubric. We'll just use this to kind of frame the discussion, and then I can get into like a specific area. Let's hit add to workspace. And what it's going to do is it's going to go into each area in the rubric with an actionable step for improvement aligned to that rubric's, specific criteria for success. And it'll just give a high level overview there. But if I said, let's focus on transition sentences or something like that, right?
And as you're typing that in there real quick, I want to share this one thought. If anybody's, coming into this now, watching this demonstration of an AI tool for teachers, everything we've been discussing and everything you've been showing us is not for someone to walk in off the street and be able to do. And the AI needs to know what education is with the help of an educator.
Yes.
So I think that's an important thing. To like, this is almost like an expert level system.
It's very much like we, through a lot of, say, in context learning, we'll provide many examples of, this is what a semantic feedback would look like, or sorry, feedback on students' logic and reasoning may look like. This is what a multiple choice question would look like, right? And then providing those examples in the context, and then giving very short instructions accompanying that. So we have like almost different sections in our prompt, broken up by different headings to kind of explain different aspects and do some work of constraining there in the prompt engineering. We're also exploring options around like retrieval augmented generation, where you provide, say, openly licensed textbooks to ground the generation in like a peer-reviewed, widely used textbook, which might be like, say, OpenStax textbooks as one example of those. So there's a lot of things you can do to constrain the AI within the parameters that you're looking for. The question is, do teachers have the time to, say, build those personal systems for themselves using like custom GPTs and all of that? Probably not. So we kind of cut out that friction point, and then we consistently refine what that workflow would look like. So we cut out most friction points that you would find in, say, building your own system to do this. So we just did less focus on transitions, and what we have are overall feedback, calling out the specific paragraph, giving some feedback on that, giving a suggested transition of like what the, upper level would look like, being able to do that. And it's focusing on that specific aspect that you're searching for.
That's great. And it does seem like this feels more like you're working with a fellow teacher to me as I'm watching you do what you're doing, and the information it's giving you and the guidance it's giving you, versus if you're just on like Copilot or ChatGPT. You know what I mean? This really does feel like it's made for the educators. So I'm going to pivot here for a minute, because we've taken up a lot of your time, and I'm curious. This was meant to be a time saver. You both are teachers in the classroom. We always talk about one of the most important things that we can do as educators, because if we don't lay the foundation of relationships or making those human connections, then none of this tends to really matter or get past the finish line like we want it to at the end of the year. So I'm curious to hear, what kind of connections have you made with some of the time that you've saved, or what kind of cool moments have you had with your students this year?
One of the cooler things that I was able to do with my kids was, some are using AI, so I'll talk about those maybe. Building out like a chatbot trained on all of the collected works of Abraham Lincoln, and then being able to ask about specific details, and then like running it as an interview. So I basically told the students, hey, you're going to interview AI Abraham Lincoln. Here's everything. Here's the whole training set. This is everything that we gave it. It's collected speeches, letters, all of it. And, what questions would we want to know? We built a rubric around it. And then the kids were, I had the keyboard, and then we were going from group to group. What's the question you want to ask? We would do that. And then you could do other things where you'd like run it through like a voice modulator, and it can actually say the responses. And that was a pretty interesting activity to get to do with the kids that I probably wouldn't have thought to do unless I was working on this.
Wait, what grade is that?
8th grade.
Yeah,
Very
cool.
So
I know we're going to try to wrap things up. In terms of the build out for this, as because I teach software development and the technology stack. So in terms of building this out, it required a certain skill set that you typically don't find in a secondary education teacher. So how, or primary, how did you go about doing this? Are you leaning on other resources that you've hired out, or did you take on the learning how to code and develop some of this on your own?
That's the third man behind the curtain who's not on the call with us. He is
Pay no attention to that man.
Yes, he's an absolute wizard. He's a very talented developer, and he built our entire site from the ground up.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
but it sounds
so,
like
I mean,
you said you
he's
benefited
terrific.
from it, though, so that's cool.
And
All right, Aaron,
with
I'm
his
done.
background in engineering, and then Hummel and I both have our background in education. My graduate work was in educational technologies, so I'm able to kind of talk to both of them and kind of understand what they're saying, and we can make decisions there. It's the Spock Kirk and Bones, right?
Right,
The classic
exactly,
trifecta.
exactly.
Yes.
How about you, Thomas Hummel? We didn't get to hear about one of your cool stories from this school year.
Yeah, so I just am really lucky to have some really great students. Just like on a personal level, like when I had my son, they got me all kinds of like awesome stuff and just some really nice notes and stuff. And it just really hit home that like I was reaching them on a deep level and that they appreciated what I was doing. So that was really cool to know that I was sort of making a difference before I left with that. But a really cool lesson that I did with like the AI stuff is we recently talked about selective breeding and artificial selection. And I have some students that are like really into like different dog breeds. Like they all like dogs for some reason. Like they like dogs. So I was able to like pull up some really awesome content for all these different dog breeds. And instead of just looking at them and saying, oh, yeah, breed that one, breed these two for a large dog, they went in, they read it, they saw the different characteristics that I was able to, make with these, with the AI. And it took my lesson from being something that just was like kind of aesthetics and kind of fun to something that was like super deep and meaningful. And kids were using evidence to make these decisions based off of that. And it just like, I was sitting there, I think that this was last week, and I was just like blown away by how hard students were working and the depth of the conversations about the dogs and the specific characteristics that they would hopefully get in the next generation. I was just blown away.
Was there any mixed breed that you were kind of laughing about that they came up with?
Well, we live on the Chesapeake, so there happened to be a Chesapeake Chesapeake lab and everything that they wanted to do. So they love those dogs. But no, I mean, it was interesting. Like, it just, some kids would, like I gave them different requirements. Like, okay, the next dog you want to be like a cuddly family dog. And they'd run over there and read about these couple of different varieties. And then the next one you wanted for protection, they'd run over there and read about these ones. And they'd be like, oh, what if we took the nice, or like the dog that barked a lot that was real small and put it with the big dog? It was just crazy. It was just like, I was just blown away.
That's neat. That's fun.
That is so great. Well, that's why we're here, right? To celebrate and continue to lift up, what educators are doing, those connections we're having with our students and the moments that they surprise us and make us laugh and remind us that they're in our lives and we're in their lives sometimes more than we are at home. So congratulations again to your newborn.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And we were so happy that you came on and shared with us a little bit more about Eduaide.ai. If people want to connect with you after listening to this episode or watching us on YouTube, where can they reach you?
All social media, Eduaide.ai. Go to the site, hit our contact, and we reply to every single email. We've granted 100% of all scholarships. So, if you need something, we got you.
Explain what that is.
We're here to help teachers. So if you can't afford it, we will cover the cost and give you a free account for an extended time.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I think that's it, Tom.
Bravo.
Yeah. Basically just reach out, send us an email, say, hey, I really like this application, but financial circumstances are such that I can't afford it at this time. And as Hummel said, we've granted 100% of these requests. So, we're some of our paid users kind of know then that they are, say, subsidizing users in sub-Saharan Africa who would not have otherwise be able to buy the platform or get onto it. We have quite a few teachers working out of Egypt who, given the exchange rate, just it wasn't tenable for them to get on Eduaide, and now they're able to. And that's thanks to our users who can afford to pay, and they do. And that system kind of, we just Boy Scouts honor, and it seems to work out just fine.
That's really great.
That's what it's all about. And Pete, if our listeners want to continue the conversation with us.
Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this and what you do in the classroom and what you're doing in the virtual world. Such a great resource. For Teachers Pep Rally, we're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're listening to us. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow, leave us a review. Let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Thomas. Thomas, I hope you have a wonderful summer. I'm sure you're going to continue. You're like us, you're entrepreneurs, so it never really is time off.
Never.
But we appreciate you having you come on and sharing this great resource.
Thank you for inviting us. Thanks for hosting us. It was a great conversation.
Thanks, guys.